Who are the 23 million people living in Taiwan? You might say a bunch of people with black hair, brown eyes, not tall, slender build. Or 95% Han Chinese, 2.5% indigenous, per government stats. Not wrong, but so boring. That's like calling the Caribbean just water with fish. In this video, I'll explain Taiwan's diversity by busting the myth of Han Chinese. But first, we've got to start with the 2.5%, the real badass. Hi, I'm Seriously Taiwan Matters. I was born and raised in Taiwan, moved to the US, and now live in Europe. These are my guinea pigs. They're in charge of sound effects. 2.5%, or 500,000 people in Taiwan, are indigenous. Such a basic word, like calling someone the first fish in the Caribbean. But these folks are anything but basic. They're the Austronesian speaking people. If you have ever sat in a catamaran, thank them. They invented those. 5,000 years ago, Austronesians were already sailing open seas in canoes about the size of a container truck. 4,000 years before the Vikings. Now, that's gangster. Today, the most widely accepted theory is called out of Taiwan. Using Taiwan as a launch pad, they spread east to Hawaii and Easter Island, south to the Philippines, Indonesia, and New Zealand, west to Malaysia and Madagascar. That's over half of the Earth. But from the 1600s onward, waves of colonizers arrived. The Dutch, the Spanish, the Qing Dynasty, the Japanese, the Republic of China under the KMT. Indigenous communities were displaced and forced to assimilate. When I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, they were barely a footnote in our textbooks. That's finally changing. Taiwan has passed laws to protect their rights and fund cultural preservation. Some tribes are using YouTube, rap, and metal to revive endangered languages. It's long overdue and long deserved. Now, let's talk about the Han Chinese, the 95%. Han is not a race, it's barely an ethnic group. It's so broad, it's like calling anything that swims Caribbean fish. Except worse, because the term started as an insult. Han refers to a dynasty from 2,000 years ago, an empire that conquered vast territories, as big as the Roman Empire. But it didn't refer to its people as Han. That label came hundreds of years later, from outsiders, like the Mongols and Manchus. As the China Institute at the University of London puts it, when these inner Asian peoples conquered and ruled those plains, they used the name Han to refer to their subject people. The subject people themselves refer to themselves as Hua, or civilized. So, imagine Genghis Khan storms into modern-day Italy, Spain, and Greece and yells, "Yo, you Romans, I'm your new boss." Yeah, it was an insult. So how did Han Chinese become a proud identity? In the 19th century, Chinese revolutionaries used it to rally opposition against the Manchu-led Qing dynasty, the us versus them tool. Later, the KMT used it to unify Taiwan under a single identity. And today, Communist China uses it to claim more people under its flag. But Han Chinese includes people with vastly different languages, customs, foods, even religions. From Minnan speakers, about 70% of the people in Taiwan, to Hakka, 15 to 20% in Taiwan, to Cantonese, to Shanghainese, and Mandarin speakers. It is so generic and loaded. So forget the label Han. How do people in Taiwan see themselves? Under one of my videos, someone wrote, "Taiwan makes you wonder. My grandpa identifies Japanese. My father identifies Chinese. I identify as Taiwanese." Wow, what a complex statement. It reflects Taiwan's layered colonial history. In 1895, the Qing dynasty lost the war and handed Taiwan to Japan. Taiwanese had to adapt. My great-grandmother, my azo, and my grandmother, my ama, spoke only Taiwanese, the Minnan language, and had to learn Japanese. Like all colonial powers, Japan committed violence, but they also developed Taiwan to build a model colony. For some, life under Japan felt more stable than what came next. In 1949, the KMT lost the civil war in China and retreated to Taiwan, bringing 1 to 1.5 million refugees and officials. They were just 10 to 15% of the population, but took control. Suddenly, Mandarin was the only language allowed in schools. The curriculum only taught Chinese history and culture. That's how my generation grew up, learning to be Chinese, period. I spoke Mandarin in school and slowly lost the ability to talk to my grandmother in Taiwanese. That viewer's father who identified as Chinese, that wasn't just personal, it was policy. And for many mainlanders who settled here, like my father, their children grew up with a sense of Chinese identity out of loyalty or pressure. When at least one side came from China, identifying as Taiwanese can feel like betrayal. Things began to shift in the late 1980s. Martial law ended, schools began teaching Taiwan's own history, local languages returned. It wasn't a sudden change, it was built on decades of resistance against colonizers, against the idea that identity must be inherited. Today, Taiwan is run by leaders elected by Taiwanese people. Over 70% identify as only Taiwanese, 80% for those under 35. But to me, the point isn't which label we choose, it's that we are free to choose in democracy. Please subscribe and check out our other videos.